That's next week. But this week we have a special guest. His name is Jack, and he actually was a spy, and he's going to come and tell us his story and how Jesus transformed his life. Before he comes, we have an intro video we want you to watch, and then we'll welcome him up.
The year is 1945. The Second World War is over, but the Cold War has just begun. Without Adolf Hitler as a common enemy, tension between the U.S. and USSR is building, each superpower focusing on the other. Both countries test their influence in war-torn Eastern Europe, fearful that the other will gain dominance if they do not. At the heart of the Cold War is an ideological split: capitalism versus communism. This division will lead to the separation of Eastern and Western Europe and the creation of the dividing line, the so-called Iron Curtain. In 1947, President Truman announces his plan. The U.S. will support any country willing to fight against the spread of communism. From Korea to Cuba, nations will be forced to pick a side. As more sides are chosen, more conflicts will escalate into real battles across the globe. In 1949, the man who would become Jack Barsky is born as Albert Dietrich in socialist East Germany. Although the song wouldn't be written until the end of the Cold War, perhaps this 1985 Tears for Fears hit best sums up the state of the Cold War world. By 1961, tension in Eastern Europe has reached an all-time high as the heart of East Germany, Berlin, is governed by the Socialist German Democratic Republic and occupied by Soviet forces. The city itself is split in two, and the Soviets construct the Berlin Wall overnight to prevent people from fleeing the eastern half of the city. The U.S. and the USSR are in an atomic arms race. Both build and test nuclear weapons in the name of never having to use them on each other. In 1962, the Soviets install nuclear missiles in communist Cuba, just 90 miles off the U.S. coast. A 13-day standoff ultimately ends in a precarious peace agreement. In 1966, in West Germany, Albert Dietrich enrolls at the University of Vienna, studying chemistry, not yet knowing how his life would be transformed by the Cold War. By 1968, the Cold War was on everyone's mind, even the Beatles. The first track on their now classic White Album, this Beach Boys-style parody song. The year is 1970. While finishing his studies at the University of Vienna, Albert Dietrich is recruited by the KGB. They give him 24 hours to decide, will he or won't he become a Soviet spy? His answer is yes. Dietrich begins intensive training. He learns everything from Morse code to surveillance to English. By 1978, he's been deployed as a sleeper agent in the U.S. under a new identity, Jack Barsky. For the next decade, Jack blends in as an American citizen while sending information back to the Soviets. But by the late 80s, the world is changing. Mikhail Gorbachev is head of state in the Soviet Union. His radical new plan? Openness and restructuring of the Soviet government. This shift allows Western ideas to slowly creep into the Soviet Union and ultimately marks the beginning of the end of the Cold War. But before the Cold War can end, Jack Barsky faces an impossible decision: how he will live the rest of his life. What is his true identity? Who is he?
Well, welcome, Jack. It's good to be with you again. Jack and I worked together about 10 years ago up in the Oakland area, and it was great to hear your story. I read your book, and it was transformative, and so I thought it'd be great to bring you down to the South Bay. So welcome to the South Bay.
Thanks for having me, and if I may, service, the tone of service is always set by the worship team, and I got the tingling here when I was listening.
The tingling? You got the tingling? We call that the Holy Spirit here. I don't know what you call it. But
oh, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
It was wonderful, and particularly there were people back there, so I had stereo surround sound.
That's good.
It was great.
So tell us how it all started. You're in university studying science.
Yeah.
How do you get recruited by the KGB? How did that happen?
It was a very, very systematic process. It wasn't just like, first of all, you couldn't apply for the job. There was no office.
You can't go on LinkedIn and just apply for KGB.
No, and there was no office with a KGB plaque on it, nothing. I never had, not even a tiny thought of ever becoming a spy. I was going to be a college professor. So, but how I got into the view of the KGB had something to do with my incredible performance academically. I, at one point, received a national scholarship, that was limited to 100 concurrent holders. So that meant I was like an ace student.
In East Germany?
Yes, I had joined the Communist Party. I was very active in the communist movement. And just to round it all up, I also was a member of the college basketball team. So apparently the whole profile was very appealing. So they said hello one day, and that was not recruitment. It was just to get to know me, and then eventually I was introduced to the hello person was actually in East German, and I thought it was the East German secret police that was trying to recruit me. No, he introduced me after we decided that I was interested in figuring out what the heck he was selling. He introduced me to somebody with a Russian accent, and that fellow's name was Herman, and Herman studied me for 18 months before he recommended that I be recruited, because they were looking for a special type of job that is very difficult. Undercover, lone wolf, illegal agent. So you enter the espionage world as somebody who you were not. And the moment I stepped on the territory of the United States, 3 days after I came to the U.S., I became Jack Barsky. I came in here with a false passport, Canadian, but no false documents. I impersonated Jack Barsky, who had passed away.
So I watched your video several times, and I just caught, listening to it even right now, you needing to learn English.
Oh, yeah.
How long did your training last to, quote unquote, become a spy? How long did they work with you before they sent you to the United States?
5 full years.
5 years.
And
what are the kind of things that they train you in?
Okay, so as it was pointed out in the video, the basic spycraft. Okay, so we're talking about surveillance, detection, secret writing, Morse code, decryption and encryption.
And what year is this exactly?
I came to the U.S. in 78, minus 5, 73.
So right at the height of the Cold War.
I got to point out that all my instructions were one-on-one. There was no classrooms. And a lot of also the instructions I had to self-teach. I was required to go to the theater, museums, the opera, ballet, history, so become an interesting person to interact with. And then I was given a choice which other language I would want to learn, and I picked English.
And are you just doing this in East Germany, or is this also in Russia?
It was 3 years in East Germany, and when it turned out that I had a phenomenal talent to acquire English with just a touch of an accent at the time, without even practicing, they moved me to Moscow, because in East Germany they didn't have a trusted individual who could teach me how to speak like an American. They had a few of those in Moscow.
So the KGB comes and speaks with you. But you had the opportunity to say no. You didn't have to say yes. So I'm curious, why did you? Were you a passionate communist? Did you hate America? What was your motivation to become a?
Yes and yes. I was absolutely, communism was my religion. And as you folks probably know, there's a lot of attractive ideas embedded in communism. It never works that way, but it's the whole idea of like everybody getting along and everybody taken care of. I don't want to go there, but I was in love with communism. And also, nothing else was taught. There was no argument. This was the only ideology that we were exposed to, number one. But that wasn't enough. I mean, it was a foundation for me to show to sign up, because when you're at a young age, and even as you get older, you always want to be attached to something bigger than yourself, and that was big. I was going to help free all the oppressed masses in the world that were suffering under the American-led capitalist system, the imperialist system. So, but you asked me what made me sign up. In addition to the ideological foundation, it was self-love and pride. I was aware that I was being recruited by the most powerful intelligence agency in the history. How do you say no to that? And we had our own version of James Bond in East Germany in the movies. And, that fellow drove the fast cars, dated a lot of pretty girls, and lived a good life while hunting down Nazis. So it was sort of like having your cake and eat it too, and the whole idea of being able to travel the world. You put it all together, it was a package that was more powerful than becoming a tenured professor in college.
So you go through 5 years of training, and eventually they send you to the United States. You arrive in Chicago, I believe?
Yes, sir, O'Hare.
And by the way, they have a great baseball team in Chicago. Have you heard of this baseball team in Chicago? We're all Chicago Cub fans.
Didn't they just won something that...
Yes, we just won. We're going to the playoffs. So anyway, you come to Chicago. What does the KGB tell you to do? What is your priority when you get here? Because there's different kinds of agents. You alluded to it.
Yeah.
There's agents that are working with the embassy, but that's not you.
Nope.
You're covert.
Yes.
So what are they asking you to do?
Undercover illegal. But my primary task was to blend in with society. I had an authentic birth certificate by the name of Jack Barsky. He was a boy who passed away at the age of 11. And the KGB managed to acquire that birth certificate. I still don't understand how that worked, but it was authentic. And then, based on that, with that foundation, I was supposed to get a driver's license and a Social Security card, so I could live and work in the United States, and eventually get to a point after a Social Security card and a driver's license, passport. That was the grand plan. It would have worked. Thank God it didn't work. The plan was for me to take that passport and move to a German-speaking country, Switzerland, Austria, and open up a business. And the KGB was really very good at money laundering. They would have put a couple of years. I would have returned to the United States with 2, 3, 4, 5 million in those days money. Wealthy enough to be able to meet people of the upper middle class or even higher that were interesting people that.
So that's your drive, is to meet higher class influential
down the road,
people.
yes. Thank God.
How did that work? Did you ever get into that circle of influencers?
No, it didn't. Well, first of all, my first job, for 3.5 years, I was a bike messenger in Manhattan.
A bike messenger?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't.
How many times did you almost get killed doing that?
Twice. I still have a dislocated right shoulder. But I couldn't take my resume with me. I had a master's degree in chemistry already. And I couldn't even pretend to know a lot of chemistry, because where did it come from? Okay, so the plan was for me to just when you have money and you bring it in from another country, you don't have to explain it. I just had this company, blah blah blah, I made money. And again, thank God it failed because I made a mistake filling out the application for the passport.
So
thank you, God.
so before you leave the KGB, and we'll get to that in a second, one thing I wanted to ask you is, I was reminded when I was rereading my notes from our first time we connected, that you had two families at one point in time.
Yeah.
So you have a family in East Germany,
right?
But then to kind of cover yourself here, you have a family here. What did they tell people in East Germany? What did your family there know about what was happening?
My mother, first of all, my father was out of my life. My mother never knew that I was a spy. We had a backstory, cover story that I worked in a super secret research facility in Kazakhstan to do space research. And we communicated with letters. You couldn't even phone, it was that secret. It was one heck of a grandiose lie, but she knew that I was always honest, and that, honest people make for the most credible liars.
Say that again. Honest people
make for the most credible liars if they choose to lie.
There they are, right there. Right? Okay, so we get to a point. You've been trying to go up the rings of society. At one point in time, the KGB somehow thinks that your cover is blown.
Yes, they did. By the way,
so what happens at that point? What do they tell you to do? They think your cover is blown.
Just one more thing. Yeah. Moving up in the ranks of society, I went to college in the U.S., and I made another mistake that God prevented me from being damaged by. I graduated as valedictorian. For an undercover illegal agent, that was not a good idea. I gave the graduation speech.
What was your degree in?
It was in a business degree. So I learned capitalism. But this was, I guarantee you, the only time that an active KGB agent gave the graduation speech at the Feld Forum at Madison Square Garden for a U.S. business school.
So why did the KGB think your cover was blown?
I don't know. Usually what happens, they were very nervous when it came to protecting us illegals because we were very expensive assets. It took 5 years to train me and then a lot of money to maintain me. So somebody may have whispered something saying that the FBI had gotten wind of an illegal that's in the United States, and they most likely, whoever was still there was called back. There weren't too many of us, not even 5. But they thought, there was a possibility of arrest, and they called me back.
So the KGB, what do they send you an email? They give you a phone call? What do they do? How do they communicate with you to tell you that it's time to go back home?
The shortest communication, very, very basic, was with signals, graphic signals.
Just like the movies?
Yeah, chalk marks, this way, that way. I arrived in the country, I received your radio transmission and that kind of stuff. And then there was this one that one day I saw, and it really was a wake-up call. It was fist-sized red dot that was placed on the support beam for the subway that I took every day. So every morning I was looking at this spot, and there was never anything there. And then one day it was like, the red spot, it says, danger, get out. Nothing else. Just, it was the emergency protocol was like, don't even go home, don't go to work, just, take and don't go to the bank, just take whatever you have and run to the border and cross into Canada. And
so they order you out, what do?
I stalled because I wasn't ready. I had to make a decision.
So what was your decision?
Well, the decision was, I was married as you indicated, to a lady who actually came to the United States as an illegal, and we were boyfriend girlfriend. She asked me to marry her, and I said, well, I'm illegal, and if you marry me, I can get a green card. I said, okay. And then I told her, once you get your green card, we get a divorce again, because I loved my family back in Germany. Well, she made a decision that changed my life. She made a decision to get pregnant. I had something to do with it, but but
So
the decision was hers.
The question was, the KGB orders you to leave.
Yes.
You decide no.
And I have, at that time, an 18-month-old girl.
So that's part of your motivation
Baby.
to not go.
And I had no idea. I wanted to take care of her because, deep down inside, I was responsible for, and I knew that if I can't support her, Mom and my daughter would grow up in poverty. So, and I had no idea that's why I stalled.
So what do you tell the KGB eventually?
Eventually, well, it went back and forth, and eventually the love, and I really need to point that out. Everything that was good for me, personally, was back in Germany. The wall was still up. I had received the second highest decoration of the Soviet Union. I had a lot of dollar savings there, and I would have returned as a conquering hero. And then there was the counterpart, the counterweight. And the counterweight was unconditional love for another human being, not a woman, this little girl. And love won. So I decided to just tell the KGB I'm not coming, and to make it sound like I didn't just ignore them, all right, because that would have been interpreted as a defection, and that would have ended not very.
So you resigned from the KGB.
I resigned.
What, do you give them a 2-week notice, or how does that work?
It took altogether maybe 3 weeks. My last letter in secret writing, I told him, I'm very grateful that you're trying to take care of me, but I really can't come back home because I am now infected with HIV/AIDS. And
that was a lie that you were just telling them?
Of course it was a lie.
Yeah.
I told you.
You're good at that.
I could still, yeah. But so, and in those days, HIV/AIDS was a death sentence. There was no cure. And I knew that in the Soviet Union, in the Eastern Bloc, everybody was glad that AIDS had hit the Western world because it was punishment for being evil. But they were very, very much afraid of somebody infected with that disease to come, because it was extremely infectious to come to the Soviet Union. And they had no reason they had no reason to not believe my story because they didn't know about the girl. Okay.
So you decide,
they believed it.
You decide to stay.
Yeah.
You leave the KGB. At one point in time, the FBI gets involved in your story.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did that happen and why? Why does the FBI start investigating you?
They never knew about me until somebody betrayed me. There was an archivist in the KGB who, over many years, smuggled out a lot of information in little pieces of paper and transcribed them and buried about 3 boxes worth of information in his dacha. And he did not, at that time, he didn't feel like contacting like CIA or MI6. MI6 is British intelligence. But when the Soviet Union fell apart, he went to one of the Baltic ex-republics and contacted MI6, and they managed to take that information out. Now here's
and it was basically your name or your contact.
What was amongst these pages and pages of information, there was just there's one very little, very few letters. There's a illegal living in the Northeast by the last name of Barsky. That's all they knew. And again, if this his name is Vasily Mitrokin, if he was still alive, I would just get on my knees in front of him and thank him for that betrayal. And
So the FBI eventually arrests you?
no, I was detained, not arrested.
Okay.
But they quickly found out that there are not too many Barskys in the United States. And I was the one who got a Social Security card at the age of like 38 or 39. So they knew, and they observed me for 2 years to make sure to determine whether I was still active. I very, very cautious because they knew one thing, that I was well trained. I had survived over at that point 19 years undetected.
So I want to shift. I mean, we invited you here today not just because you have an interesting spy story, but because of the impact that Jesus made on your life.
Yes, sir.
And let me start by asking you and setting it up. Years ago, I remember there was this show on TV called The Americans. It was about a couple in the United States that were Russian spies, and they were considered to be Americans, and they have a family, and they're deep undercover. And I remember in one of the scenes in this movie, or this series, one of the kids becomes friends with a local pastor, and they invite him over to dinner. And afterwards, when it's all done, the wife, a spy, tells her husband, also a spy, "This is crazy. Our kids are becoming indoctrinated and stupid." And I want to ask you first and foremost, why does communism so anti-religion and anti-Christianity?
Because if you are a follower of Christ, there's only one authority you follow. And that is unacceptable to any dictatorial government. So, there was competition. The church in East Germany, where I grew up, was highly supervised. There were some pastors who were agents for the Stasi, East German secret police, was not allowed to flourish. And growing up, my father was a party member, and he had a career. Growing up, I don't even know the first time I heard the German word, Jesus Christus, Jesus Christ. And we had Christmas, but Christmas was about Santa Claus and presents. And Easter, there was no cross in our Easter. There was not even in high school or in college, there was not even a single course that would have said, religions of the world, and then they would have should have taught us that, why these religions are all stupid. They were afraid to even touch that. So I grew up knowing, when I came to the U.S., I grew up knowing that Christians were fundamentally stupid and used Christianity, their belief, as a crutch. Okay, that is, I was convinced of that. Over time, the stupidity argument failed miserably, because when I was working now as a professional computer programmer, I met quite a few people who told me that they were Christians, and they were really smart. So I had to get rid of my atheism. And I became an agnostic. I didn't want to touch the thought about God.
You grew up atheist. We don't have any communists here that I know of. They normally come second service. First service is our good service. But we do have a lot of well-educated people here in the South Bay and at Journey South Bay Church. Many that are very well educated when it comes to science. And you were a scientist. And one question that I want to ask you as it relates to faith is, why do you think many scientists or intellectual people struggle with Christianity?
It's arrogance, because they know better than the rest of us. But if but you can turn this upside down. There's a lot of really, really outstanding scientists in the history of science, particularly physics, who could not resist the thought that there is a God, at least. They may not have been Christians, but Einstein clearly knew that the universe had to be created by something from the outside. And that's how I eventually came to understand that there must be a God, there must be a creator.
It was through science?
Well, yeah, the whole idea of something coming into existence during the Big Bang out of nothing, and then organize itself in such a way that we have all the magical, the plants, the earth that is totally in balance, the solar system, animals and plants, the human brain that doesn't organize itself. That is impossible. There's something called a third law of thermodynamics in physics that says a closed system will tend towards disorder. So in other words, if you want order in a system, it has to come from the outside. So this is a logic that was presented to me by the person who evangelized me, and she knew that she had to start with my head and with the logic, and it's called apologetics. C.S. Lewis, and somebody who is not alive anymore, Dr. Ravi Zacharias, who ran a radio program. It's called Let My People Think. And he made a believer in a God.
So your transition is from atheism to agnosticism to now I believe in God.
Yes.
How do you get to Jesus? What was the steps that helped you understand the person and the sacrifice of Jesus?
Well, and I was already mentioning that there was a young lady that I hired as I was a chief information officer at a large company, and I hired her as my administrative assistant, and she was a hardcore believer and a street evangelist, and she did it. The story of how she evangelized me systematically would take up too much time. Systematically, she started with my brain, and then she constantly would tell me how wonderful her church was, and she knew that I liked music, and she says, "Oh, the music is really good," and like that. And I said, one day, "No, why don't I come?" And that was at a time when I was in the greatest prolonged mental crisis in my life, and that had to do with a divorce. The mother of this child, this girl, had become unsafe to live with, and I had to just break up the marriage, and the divorce took 18 months, and she fell prey to a nasty attorney who made up all kinds of things, and I was depressed. And so at one point I told a friend of mine, I said, this love thing doesn't work for me. I'm not going to ever fall in love again. And that friend was a female, and she said, "But Jack, you're a lover." She was right.
So how did you come to Jesus?
Yes. So so I asked this young lady to take me to a service at our church. And the music was good, and the pastor...
Watch out what you say about the pastors now.
The pastor had a glow on his face, similar to this young lady who is at this end of the worship team. I spoke with her, where the Holy Spirit seems to make a mark on a person's face. It's like, you know what I'm talking about. It's like the knowledge that God is good and He is with us. And he spoke, and his sermon was dedicated to me. He said, because he spoke about the love of God, and I needed that. And so I went to church every weekend to just hear the messages.
When comes your decision to accept Christ as your Savior?
On a golf course. It was just like, it just came over me. It was a really nice summer day, cumulus clouds, and I'm waiting for my friend to find his ball, and I'm looking up there, and it just came over me. He says, Jesus, I know you know you're there. I know you're God. And I now declare you my God. And the week after that happened, that church didn't have an altar call. At the end of service, I went up to the pastor, and he looked at me and said, what can I do for you? And I said, I want to give my life to Jesus. And he got on his microphone, people were already leaving, and he shared this with the congregation. I don't remember anything. I was out of it. The only reason that I know what happened is that people were praising God and saying hallelujahs and so forth was because the evangelist that I was talking about was there, and she witnessed it, and she told me what happened. Yeah. It was a spiritual experience if I ever had one.
How long ago was that?
16 years ago.
How has Jesus changed your life? You've talked about you were really good at lying, which is not something the Bible is for. You've talked about arrogance and pride. How has Jesus changed you in these last 16 years?
Humility. And I learned how to live a life that I could be comfortable with.
What do you mean by that?
Well, stop the lying to begin with, and live the way Jesus taught us in the Bible. And the most important thing that I took away from that is, when reading the Bible and following Jesus, is like this one sentence: love thy neighbor as you love yourself. So that it's all about love. And the way I operate these days, I have learned how to treat people with love, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Because the moment I make that a precondition, then I make that love dependent on somebody else. It's in me. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm okay with the sin, it's because he loved the sinner. Jesus did. He loved the most unworthy. And that made a big difference in my life.
Before we wrap up, we got a couple minutes left. I want to ask you one final question about faith before we wrap up. What would you say to someone who's wrestling with Christianity or wrestling with Jesus? What would be your advice to them?
My advice is, we have to define what wrestling means.
Doubting, questioning. What is your advice to them?
Doubting, questioning, study. I mean, I'm a thinking person. Apologetics to me eventually erased all doubt. That includes also the fact that Jesus was real, and that there's so much evidence when you talk that he actually was raised from the dead. So.
Studying that is what you'd say.
Yes. If there's a doubt left, that means you're uncomfortable with giving up, and you're uncomfortable with the fact that there's a God there that rules the universe,
including ourselves.
Yeah. And
okay.
The whole arrogance of being in charge of life. Anybody think about your past and how many times you were not in charge, even though you thought you were. And in my life, that happened countless times.
Wrapping up, just a couple things. My understanding, as I recall talking to you, is you became an American citizen. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're an American citizen now. You came from East Germany, communist, KGB spy. Now you're an American citizen. Are you glad to be an American? What do you think of America?
Yeah, well, obviously, the alternative, I shiver. If I had returned back, I wouldn't, when the KGB wanted me back.
Have you been back to Germany or Russia?
I have been back to Germany, not Russia, no. But if everything had worked out the way they wanted it to work out, I would, if I'm still alive, I would be a miserable old fart in Russia. And I'm not, because I know that there's so much evidence that God has my back, and He's guiding me through the best part of my life.
Amen. Just wrapping up, we only have a couple minutes, but I'm curious, as you look at America-Russian relations today, do you think Russia is involved in our culture, in our politics, what is your personal opinion in terms of what you think may be happening or not?
Well, they try, but then clearly, if anybody blames Russia for what's going on in this country, that's a lame excuse. We're doing the damage to us ourselves. We are falling apart from the inside, and in my prayers, every morning when I pray to God, I ask for a revival. And this is, I think, the only thing that can save the country, because we need God back in the nation as he was when the nation was founded.
It's strange to hear a KGB former spy say that, but I think we would agree with you. Just one last question as it relates to Russia and America. Does Putin care about you? I mean, here you are writing books and sharing stories, and I mean, because sometimes you hear in the news about former agents and they accidentally fall off a balcony or things like that. So
yes, that's why I don't go to Russia.
Why are you still here? Like, I guess.
No. Let me tell you something. The assassinating somebody in another country is a very difficult task, and it requires the best teams, and they don't. I'm not. If there's a list of agents to go after, I'm way at the bottom. Having said that, if I travel to Moscow, I will have an accident. You know why? Because Putin sends messages. We'll get.
Even though you're not important, he's wanting to potentially send messages. Is what you're saying?
Right. I'm not that important anymore because my case is very old, and the people who may still be alive, most everybody I work with is not with us anymore, and there may be 2 or 3 people who would like to see me dead, but it's just not enough to hire a team and take that risk. But I fall out of a window. The Russian press doesn't have to say a word. The Western press will pick it up, and that's the message that Putin sends to all the agents that work for Russia. Don't even think about it. We'll get you.
Well, in a moment, we're going to let Jack go in the back. He's got a book back there that tells much more detail. It's a great read if you'd like to go back there and meet Jack and maybe get a picture. We got a couple minutes left. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you weren't able to share that I didn't ask? Anything that you would like to say to Journey South Bay Church? Well,
and I sort of hinted at that already. I also give a testimony freestanding. It's called God Had a Plan for Me. And in that testimony, I cite dozens of situations where I thought I was in charge of my life and I was not. Starting, for instance, with this young lady just making a decision to get pregnant, right? But there were so many other examples, and I had the opportunity to find out more because I was interviewed all over the place. I met people that made decisions that had an impact on my life. But for instance, the KGB archivist betrayed me, right? And then the FBI agent who was the lead in my case convinced the upper echelon of the FBI not to put me in jail. That was his decision, not mine. And so there's so much evidence that God operated in my life pretty much from day one. Okay? So, and all of you, if you honestly look back, you will find evidence for what I have plenty of. And I just want to one more time stress the importance of love in my life. It makes such a difference, and it includes the love for a female partner who is with me today, but there's a whole lot more about it, and it just makes for what I call the lightness of being. Occasionally I get annoyed when somebody cuts me off, but I don't carry this forward. And most days, after my prayers in the morning, I feel good because I know He's with me.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for being with us. We enjoyed having you. Journey South Bay, can we give Jack a big warm welcome? Jack's going to head to the back, and go ahead. You can start heading to the back.
Hold my hand. Because
Hold your hand, yeah. We want you here second service.
I have astigmatism and I have a problem going down. Okay, thank you.
There you go. Thank you, Jack.